Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to another book review. And today I am reviewing The Interpreter by Suki Kim. And I originally reviewed this several years ago for a magazine. And what I've been doing recently is I've been going back through all of these old book reviews I wrote for magazines and just recording them or sort of editing them a little bit and then recording them for the channel. Anyway, yeah, so this book's actually quite old now. It's over 20 years old. It was initially published back in 2003. And it is, it's a striking debut novel, not easily categorized or well, sort of blends genres. So on the surface, it's a murder mystery. You have 29-year-old Suzy Park. Suzy is a Korean American court interpreter in New York, and she stumbles upon a clue that her parents' unsolved murder was not a random crime. And this pulls her into the city's dangerous Korean underworld. And at the same time, the book is also a deep character study and social commentary. Part of what the book is doing is it's dissecting Susie's personal alienation and the immigrant experience. And at the time, it was quite highly praised, and earned some sort of awards and nominations. And some of the reviews at the time, sort of said, this book heralds Suki Kim as a unique, new voice in Korean American literature. But actually, since then, I think she's mostly stuck to nonfiction. I don't think that I'm just going to double check very quickly, but I don't think she's actually done any more. I don't think she's actually done any more fiction. I think this is still her only novel. I can't see anything listed that she's done. She did a work of nonfiction about North Korea called "Without You, There Is No Us." But sort of when I was skimming through this again for this review to sort of remind me of this book, I was a little surprised that she hasn't gone back to writing fiction or hasn't published any more fiction, and that's a little sad because this is a pretty good novel. So yeah, so what is the story is, like I said, it's about failed relationships, but it uses this sort of noir-esque kind of mystery style. It uses detective fiction kind of tropes and so on, to tell this story. And you also, because of her job as a court interpreter, translating from Korean to English, that we also have sort of it's also about interpretation. And interpretation is used as a metaphor, and then these elements together, the writer Suki Kim, sorry, sort of uses these kind of elements to sort of shed some light on the Korean immigrant experience in America. So anyway, let's get into it. So a major facet of The Interpreter is its portrayal of the main character's very troubled personal life. And at the beginning of the novel, she is very emotionally isolated. So when the novel begins, she is living in a state of quite, extreme alienation. And this is understandable because she is grieving her parents' violent deaths and estrangement from her only sister. And so, as such, she's carrying quite a lot of emotional baggage, maybe having some psychological problems. She's also had some failed relationships with married men, a series of quite unsatisfying jobs, and she has this an intense feeling of guilt for having cut ties with her parents. Over her, they were dissatisfied with her lifestyle decisions, but she cut ties with them before they were murdered, and so of course this is sort of weighing heavily on her. So anyway, these sort of doomed and hollow relationships that she is having, they're more than just her sort of backstory. They reflect this lasting trauma of her family's collapse, and her detachment from lovers and friends or good relationships, this appears to be just partly due to her general disconnection from life and society following her parents' murder. So, in effect, her personal relationships have essentially stalled in grief and guilt. And this casts a kind of morose and melancholy tone over the first half of the novel. And you have this present tense narration, and it's a very moody narration. And she kind of drifts in this sort of somnolent ghost-like state. She sort of drifting through the city and through Manhattan. And you get the sense that she is experiencing this sort of emotional paralysis. And so, for something which is ostensibly a crime novel, it's a very slow. These opening acts are kind of slow and introspective. And essentially, what we're getting here is this very tortured portrait of a young woman who is consumed by loss and grief. But these opening sections, they set the stage for the transformation that she goes through. Only by uncovering the truth about her family can Suzy confront her past and then ultimately re-engage with the world. And so the novel's sort of literary dissection of these relationships adds the psychological depth to what would otherwise be a straightforward crime story, right? If you remove this sort of those elements, the family elements, it's not going to have the same impact, right? So the sort of personal and the family, the familial are at the core of the mystery. And Suzy's journey to accept some painful truths about her parents is just as important as solving the crime, right? This would be a completely different story if it was Sam Spade or Humphrey Bogart in a film noir, investigating the crime, right? Uh, so anyway, but we do have this murder mystery element, and you do have this kind of underworld, sort of a seedy side of big city kind of underworld thriller elements as well. So, and we get these elements kind of in parallel to the more intimate drama. And this murder mystery plot is quite compelling. So the Suki Kim is employing the conventions of suspense and crime fiction to sort of propel Suzy out of her isolation and into action. She's sort of forced to re-engage with the world. So it's 5 years after her parents' murder, and this was a double homicide in their Bronx grocery store. I think it's a grocery store. That's what a British name for it. Maybe, but a grocery store. Just the neighborhood sort of convenience store. And she stumbles upon some new information during a court case, which has a significant impact on her understanding of her own family's history. And this is a chance discovery that she becomes aware of due to her job as a court translator. She's translating something for a completely separate situation, and someone happens to mention something which connects to her own family's history and the murder of her parents. And so this is the first clue. This is the thing which spurs her into action, and this suggests that her parents, their murders weren't random. These weren't just sort of random acts of violence. That there might have been something, something deeper, some more nefarious reason, perhaps, behind their deaths. They were targeted, and so at this point, the novel's pace sort of quickens and it picks up. And Suzy transitions into an amateur sleuth. And obviously, she becomes determined to find out what really happened to her parents. And she wants to investigate what happened to her parents, and also the situation of her sister, which is connected, and will eventually unfold some secrets which have been buried in her family's past. And as she digs deeper into the events surrounding her parents' murder, she is drawn into an underworld of crime and intrigue. There are Korean criminal gangs. There are corrupt or sort of dubious cops. There are sort of prostitutes living difficult lives. Informants of different kinds, and you have these kind of figures populating the story. And of course, this gives it gives it the novel the gritty atmosphere of a noir thriller, but sort of kind of focused around Korean criminal underbelly of New York, which is a world that maybe you don't see very often, right? And anyway, so she sort of, she has to engage with the sort of dangerous figures in the Korean crime scene in New York to try and find answers. And as she starts investigating, she starts to receive anonymous threats. So she gets these sort of, hang up phone calls and people phoning her apartment and hanging up. Someone leaves a bouquet of her mother's favorite flowers on the anniversary of the killings. And these are kind of like sort of classic suspense devices that raise the stakes, right? You get a feeling that Susie's in danger if she keeps investigating. And anyway, we also have the question of motive looming over everything. And Susie begins to suspect that maybe her parents were informers for the immigration services. And she also starts to think, or there's evidence that her sister was sort of connected to, or flirting with involvement in the sort of Korean crime underworld. And these possibilities, add tension, and we also have red herrings and misdirection, which again is very reminiscent of detective novels. And crucially, once the investigation begins in earnest, the sort of urgency, sense of urgency really kind of energizes the narrative and overcomes the inertia of Susie's earlier despair in the first section of the book. And so the second half of the book, sort of picks up pace, and as we get this sort of series of new discoveries, and she begins to unravel who done it, who killed her parents, and also to confront her family's hidden life. And so you get this blend of a suspenseful plot with personal stakes. And Kim is using the murder mystery genre to explore, the themes of truth and betrayal and reconciliation in a kind of personal way. But one of the enjoyable aspects of the book, at least for me, is how Kim deliberately exploits and subverts detective fiction as a narrative technique, as a strategy. So Suzy Park is a quite unlikely detective figure. She's not a hardened police investigator or a private eye or a gumshoe or anything like that. She's an interpreter, and she's armed only with her intuition and her linguistic skills. But nonetheless, the interpreter follows a lot of the conventions of noir and suspense novels. And Susie's quest, for truth, it leads her through the shadowy corners of New York's immigrant communities. And this is very much like the classic detective journey into society's underbelly. She's questioning reluctant witnesses, piecing together clues, revisiting crime scenes from the past. And so the novel features all of these familiar genre elements. It's a cold case. Her parents' murder was 5 years ago. You have these anonymous threats that are hidden identities. Revelations of double lives. This uncomfortable possibility that her seemingly respectable parents were actually covert informants, informing on other people in their community. And then we also have this sort of missing person subplot with Susie's estranged sister, whose absence and her secrets add another layer of intrigue and suspense. And so these ingredients give the story a sort of a hybrid mystery, suspense, literary drama kind of feel and atmosphere. And so, like I said, it initially unfolds slowly and patiently at the beginning. It has a sort of almost dreamlike, numb, deadened tone, which is obviously a little unusual for something that's meant to be a thriller. But that choice, I think, ultimately does deepen this sense of noirish alienation, right? Susie's initially moving through the city like a ghost. Her psyche is numb, and then she's sort of forced out of that feeling. And she has to sort of deal with these kind of difficult situations, right? And so it's quite an interesting and unusual combination. And of course, as the clues kind of accumulate and she gets closer to the truth, the danger increases and the style sort of shifts a little bit, right? It just becomes a bit more engaging, right? And this, I think grows quite organically from Susie's personal stakes. And so I think really Kim is using like detective fiction. It's for one, it's entertaining, but it's also to illuminate this Susie's character and the themes of the story, right? Susie's an investigator. But she's also implicated in the crime's consequences. So she's not detached, right? Like a private detective or something like that. She is very much emotionally connected to the case. And she even, crosses ethical lines. She misuses her role as an interpreter as she's trying to uncover the truth. But at the same time, the interpreter does fulfill these expectations of the mystery genre, right? The questions are answered, the culprit is unmasked, but it does so whilst looking at these kind of specific issues about, immigration and the Korean immigrant community. So anyway, it's quite a clever use of genre conventions, and I thought it's a page turner. At the same time, it's also quite thought provoking commentary on identity and justice and various other things. Another aspect of the story which is important is Susie's profession. So she interprets between Korean and English in courtrooms in New York City courtrooms, and so this becomes a metaphor which is woven into the story. And Kim repeatedly draws parallels between the act of translation and Susie's role in life. And at one point, Susie remarks that the interpreter is the shadow. The key is to be invisible. She's the only one in the room who knows the truth. She's a keeper of secrets. And this idea of the interpreter as an invisible presence speaks to Susie's own feelings of invisibility in America and her habit of observing life rather than fully participating. The novel, it's sort of trying to highlight the complex power dynamics of interpreting. Susie stands literally and figuratively between people. She's mediating communication, but also holds the power to shape it. And in fact, in a key scene, she actually violates this neutral role of interpreter by subtly adjusting a witness's words to bridge cultural misunderstandings and even to fish for clues about her parents, right? So she's hearing things, but she's not fully translating them, right? She's keeping some information for herself and maybe changing some information for the authorities. And anyway, these kind of moments underscore this idea or this theme that meaning can be lost or created in translation. Just as understanding between cultures or between family members, perhaps, is fraught with translation and communication errors. And so her linguistic skill is it's a tool, and it's also part of what makes her a detective in the story. She's kind of a detective through language, right? And so, on one level, this act of interpretation, this symbolizes Susie's sort of half life in two worlds, right? She's bilingual and bicultural, but she's constantly shifting between Korean and English, between her immigrant family's expectations and her own American life. And it's this state of in betweenness that has left her with a rather fragmented sense of identity. And in one reflection, she sort of muses that Being bilingual, being multicultural should have brought two worlds into one heart, and yet it meant a persistent hollowness. She was stuck in a vacuum where neither culture moved nor owned her. And so here we see Kim using this, using the language as a metaphor to illustrate the immigrant condition of feeling belonging to neither world. And Susie struggled to interpret her own identity, to sort of to find meaning in the mix of Korean and American parts of herself, mirrors the literal interpreting she does in court. And the entire novel can be seen as an act of interpretation. Susie must translate the cryptic events of the past into a coherent truth. She has to interpret clues and memories to finally come to some kind of understanding about her parents and about herself. And by the conclusion, her role has shifted from this sort of invisible translator of other people's stories to someone who is actively narrating her own story. And it's Kim integrates this interpretation motive. And I think it's quite a clever narrative device, adds layers of meaning, it reinforces these themes of communication and understanding, and this idea of the search for truth across cultural divides. Okay, I've just got a couple more things to say here. So, at its heart, though, the Interpreter is really a novel about the Korean American immigrant experience, and it uses the mystery plot as a vehicle to explore deeper social and cultural themes. So Susie's family history reflects the journey of many Korean immigrants pursuing the American dream. Her parents were hardworking greengrocers. And they often would forfeit their own personal happiness for their children's gain, sorry. And so, of course, this is a common sacrifice of first generation immigrants. And so her parents toiled for, long hours in their corner store, 7 days a week. They were determined to build a better life for their daughters, even if this came at great personal cost. And of course, this aligns with the real world narrative of Korean immigrant shopkeepers in New York, who often did and do labor tirelessly in difficult neighborhoods in hope that their children could achieve the success that they couldn't. But Kim kind of fractures this image, of the Asian immigrant family by showing this darker side of the struggle, right? Susie's parents achieved material stability, but at the expense of their family. They were strict, they were emotionally distant, they expected absolute obedience, they clashed with their increasingly Americanized daughters. And the novel portrays this intergenerational conflict, which is a familiar theme in literature about immigrant families. Susie drops out of college. She kind of runs off with someone who isn't Korean, and her family see this as a disgrace, and this is what leads to them severing their relationship before her parents are murdered. And so these tensions, that this is really about the gap between the old world values of her parents and the new world dreams of Susie and other children like her. So anyway, the mystery at the core of the story has these explicitly ethnic and political dimensions. So the big revelation that Susie's parents might have been informers for U.S. immigration authorities, touches on some very distressing issues, right? Loyalty, betrayal, things that are important in the immigrant community, and it suggests that her parents, in trying to survive and assimilate, they might have gotten tangled up in some quite morally ambiguous dealings that turned their own community against them. And, this is sort of revealing the underside of the immigrant experience, right? The pressures, the compromises, the resentment that lie, beneath the sort of the facade of the model minority which is sometimes sort of talked about in relation to Asian immigrants in America. And it's the distance between the sort of the old world and the new world, between poverty, and escaping poverty, language. This is quite a nuanced picture of Korean American life that includes the hopes as well as the hardships. And by the end of the novel, when the truth is revealed, the truth of the murders, it's a very bittersweet understanding. Susie gets this bittersweet understanding of her parents, and not just as victims, but as very fallible people who were shaped by the immigrant struggle. And so she learns the truth about her path, about her past, and kind of illuminates her own understanding of herself as the American-born daughter of immigrants. And this resolution underscores this commentary on identity. So Susie is coming to terms with herself as a Korean American, not fully one or the other, but this kind of blend, and finds a measure of peace in this hybrid identity. And so the interpreter uses the crime story to sort of go into to look at what it means to be a Korean immigrant in America, tackling themes of cultural identity and community, and just the personal costs of assimilation. So I think I'm going to wrap up there. I thought it was a pretty good book, at the time. Like I said, I'm surprised that Suki Kim didn't do any more fiction. I thought it was a pretty intriguing work. It's multi-layered. It's kind of a mixture of crime, sort of literary fiction, crime thriller. I think the Korean American, like the setting, like in that community, I think is interesting. The blend of genres, I think, works quite well. It's not, it's a murder mystery, but it's also a meditation on family and loss and the search for identity. I like the way that Suki Kim uses or harnesses the familiar kind of aspects of detective fiction, kind of subverts them as well. I think that Susie is a good heroine. She's a good protagonist. She goes from this sort of lost person to a determined Sherlock Holmes-like detective. And I think the use of language and interpretation, I think that's also quite a clever motive or theme. And the way the book talks about or explores the nuances of communication and cultural identity, what's lost or found in translation, I think these are all done quite well. It's also the way that it portrays the immigrant experience is very interesting. You see one generation's sacrifice and their hopes can becomes the next generation's burden. And at the time when it was published, like I said, it did get some good reviews. And people, there was a general consensus, if you kind of go back and look at some of those reviews, that this book was announcing Suki Kim as a talented young writer. And so as I've said, I think it's kind of sad that she hasn't done any more fiction. So it's only all she seems to have done in terms of writing since then is like several articles and then a memoir about teaching in North Korea. Um, and I actually met her. She came to my book club, a long time ago, maybe a decade ago now. And I can't remember if anyone asked her if she was planning to do some more fiction. But yeah, I think it's a little strange, a little sad that we didn't get any more fiction from Suki Kim. So as far as I'm aware, this is it in terms of her fiction output. So I do recommend picking it up. I think it's a pretty good crime book, and for the reasons that I've talked about for the past 30 minutes. And Enemy, thanks for watching. I've got a couple more video sort of scripts in different stages of completion, and I'll try and record some more of those sometime soon. So take care, and thanks for watching.